Spread too thin? Number 85. Welcome back. Today, we'll be looking at the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke to see how Jesus focused on 3 disciples even among the 12. So let's get started. Matthew 9 verses 23 to 26, Mark 5 verses 35 to 43, Luke 8 verses 49 to 56. While he was still speaking, messengers from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader, arrived and said, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore?" But Jesus overheard their conversation and said to Jairus, "Do not be afraid. Just believe, and she will be healed." When he entered the house of the synagogue leader, he did not allow anyone to go in with him except Peter, James, John the brother of James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, everyone was weeping and mourning for her. Jesus saw the commotion and the people weeping and wailing loudly. He saw the flute players and the noisy crowd. He went inside and asked, "Why all this commotion and weeping? Stop weeping. The child is not dead, but asleep." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. He told them, "Go away." After he had put them all outside, he took the child's father and mother and his own companions, and went in to see the child. Jesus went in and took the girl by the hand and said, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." And immediately her spirit returned. She got up and began to walk around. And he directed that she be given something to eat. She was 12 years old, and at once her parents were utterly astounded. Then Jesus gave strict orders that no one should know about this or to tell anyone what had happened. But the news about this spread throughout that region. My thoughts. Again, there are so many different directions to go with this one, but I'll go down the path least traveled. Jesus chose 3 to be with him for the healing of Jairus' daughter: Peter, James, and John. One could make the argument, maybe the house was too small for Jesus to bring the whole entourage. Or maybe he's just rotating his disciples in on special occasions. You know, what's fair is fair. Jesus doesn't want to be exclusionary, does he? Well, you might come to some of these conclusions if you weren't reading the Gospels on a routine basis and saw that Jesus actually does this in 2 more situations: the Mount of Transfiguration and the Garden of Gethsemane. No, Jesus is being strategic here. He's making sure these 3 are getting additional attention. But why? Again, we can probably come up with a dozen reasons, but I think one reason was that he was modeling what focused discipleship looks like. He did it with the 12, and now he's being even more focused with the 3. I don't think the number is as important as the principle. We all have capacity issues, and we all need to be careful not to get so broad in our approach to training that we lose the potency needed to see effective transformation. This is exactly what happens when we think that a sermon a week is adequate instruction to change 500 people's lives. Don't get me wrong, there's a place for preaching to a bunch of people. Jesus preached to the crowds. But expecting real serious transformation on 1 sermon a week, or even 3 sermons, is like thinking a strict diet of chocolate cake is going to help us lose weight. But most of the people who bother to read this blog are in no danger of thinking this way. We have a different problem. Our problem has to do with trying to mentor more than we can effectively handle. Consider this: the greatest disciple maker who ever lived limited himself to 12 and even 3 on certain occasions. Who are we to think we can load up 20? And just as a reminder, Jesus was not married, didn't commute to a job, no lawn to mow, and not even taxiing kids to soccer practice twice a week. Let's say most of our capacity is quite a bit lower than Jesus. And that is the God-given reality we live in. So how do we manage these capacity issues and keep making disciples effectively? By staying within the limits of the context God has called us to. Again, it's not about the number. It's about the principle. Effective transformation, as far as our responsibility is concerned, has to do with potent mentoring. And we can only do that with a few like Jesus did. So let's be good stewards and mentor within the realm of effective capacity. My story. In the past 2 days, I've met with 2 guys where the principles of focused, intentional, and targeted mentorship emerged as a key topic of discussion. This recurring theme could be due to the fact that it's the topic of my blog this week. But I think it's more likely a reflection of a broader issue. Mentors attempting to cast their net too wide and, consequently, diluting their ability to effectively guide others towards personal spiritual growth and ministry skills. The core concern seems to be that by spreading themselves too thin, these mentors are losing their capacity to profoundly influence individuals in their journey to become more Christ-like. This is a surefire way to get me all fired up. The veins in my neck start popping out, and I go into preacher mode and start pontificating on the importance of maintaining a targeted and purposeful approach to mentorship, ensuring that the mentor's impact remains deep and transformative rather than shallow and diffuse. So, why do I get so riled up? Have you ever seen the National Geographic documentary where the baby sea turtles are hatched and they are flapping their little fins as fast as they can to get to the water before something eats them? I see that as a modern parable of what Christianity looks like today. People are born again, and they are pointed towards the sea. But who's showing them how to get there? Who's protecting them along the way? You could say Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and you would be very accurate. But what about our stewardship in the process? We have been commanded to make disciples. Shouldn't we be doing as good a job as we can, while God is doing the heavy lifting? Let's see how Paul viewed his stewardship of the discipleship process. According to the grace of God which was given to me, like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation, and another is building on it. But each man must be careful how he builds on it. For no man can lay a foundation other than the one which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now if any man builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each man's work will become evident. For the day will show it, because it is to be revealed with fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. 1 Coríntios 3:10-13. So, I see my responsibility in mentoring others as a primary ministry and ultimately a significant impact on not only individual transformation, but also the way to multiply disciples. Our action plan. Now we'll look at some ideas on how to help us as disciple makers, help many, but mentor a few with the goal of transformation and multiplication. Do a deep study on the mentorship of the 12 in the Gospels. Read The Master Plan of Evangelism by Robert Coleman. Watch this video on 139, Finding a Timothy. Jesus-focused mentorship of Peter, James, and John serves as a powerful reminder that effective discipleship often requires investing deeply in a few rather than spreading ourselves too thin. By emulating his example, we can cultivate transformative relationships that not only foster personal growth, but also empower others to disciple those around them.